Suave.
I've been in my bag for a while, I'm invincible. Story of a young boss, grinding shit get critical. Calling on my bros one time, cause you special. I had some hoop dreams of right rounds for my mentor. Every target that I shoot is on point like a pencil. Different road, changed relationships, I'm so sorry. Came up from the trenches and I made it, I say hardly. Now
It's playoff time, and the usual suspects are heading to Vegas for the championship. And our partner BetOnline is your number one source for football odds, stats, trends, and lines. With everything from point spreads to hundreds of bets on everything from the coin toss to the color of Gatorade. BetOnline is the number one source for your championship wagering. Head to BetOnline and join today to get into all the action. BetOnline, the game starts here. Alrighty, guys, we are back with another episode of the What's in Your Bag podcast presented by Bet Online. As always, my name is Andrew Robinson, and we're joined by our wonderful, wonderful host, Alexis Davis. Alexis, thank you for coming on the show today. Glad to have you back.
Happy to be here.
Now, before we introduce our special guest for today, you guys know we got to get the business out of the way first. If you're watching this on YouTube, go ahead and give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, drop a comment, and goes a long, long way in getting this show out to people who love us and who need to hear it. If you're hearing this on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, go ahead and give us a 5-star rating. Again, give us some feedback. It goes a long, long way. That was my guy, Pull Up Tay, on the intro. It's going to be him as well on the outro. Make sure you guys are streaming his music, one of the hottest up-and-coming artists out of the DMV. But now that we got the business out of the way, as you guys can see, we are joined by a special guest today. If you guys are tuning in this, you guys already know that this is somebody who is super, super influential in the basketball space, somebody who we are super excited to have on and talk about her wealth of experience from hooping to content creation, influencing, all the above, hosting. We are honored and excited to have Infamous Kayce on the podcast today. Kayce, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
No doubt, no doubt. Now, we're just talking a little bit off air, kind of about your upbringing, just like being from Seattle. And I want to give you kind of opportunity to talk about what's the vibes like out in Seattle now. I know it's the wintertime. I know I'm out here on the East Coast, and Alexis is out in Arizona, so I know she's probably got the best weather out of all of us. But what is wintertime in Seattle looking like right now?
Right now, like literally right now, it is wet and rainy. I know people think it rains like all the time, and it does rain a lot, but it doesn't rain as much as people think. So, and maybe that's just me because I live in Seattle, but like I've been in other cities where it's like pouring rain. Like here, it's like a little drizzle, a sprinkle. Like we don't use umbrellas out here, so it's wet. But yesterday, like during the day, honestly though, today was pretty like sunny. So I guess it just varies.
No umbrellas is very bold for Seattle. I feel like I'll be out there just braving the conditions.
Right. If you use an umbrella, it's like basically saying like you're not from the city.
Wow, let me write that in my notes. Those that ever go out to Seattle. That's dope. So obviously I don't know if you got a chance to see this yet, but as of this recording, the All-Star roster just got announced for the NBA. I think it's been a couple first-time All-Stars. Tyrese Maxey, Jalen Brunson made it. Are you planning on heading out to All-Star Weekend this year?
I will be headed out to All-Star Weekend. This will be my fourth All-Star Weekend, I think. I did Chicago right before before COVID hit. And then we did Cleveland, Utah, and then obviously this year we're going to Indiana.
Liddy, what's your favorite part about All-Star Weekend, would you say? Or what are you most looking forward to about this year in India? It's been crazy because we've had all these small markets, Cleveland, we had Charlotte a few years back, Utah, Indiana. So what are you most looking forward to this year?
I always, for me, the thing I look forward to the most is like linking up with all of my friends and fellow creators, fellow people in the sports space. It's kind of like one big like basketball reunion, and everyone is just kicking it, hanging out. Like I like being busy when I'm not in Seattle, just because I feel like it's like a high for me, because I'm like complete opposite when I'm in Seattle. So when I'm like in another city, I have like this crazy burst of energy. And like All-Star Weekend is like back to back to back stuff. And you're like literally moving from one thing to the other, to the other, to the other. And it's just so fun. And you're literally seeing everybody, people you haven't seen in years, people you haven't seen in months. And it's just a really cool link up. And there's so many really cool activations and brands that are there. And then a lot of times, like with brands, you get to actually like put a face to like a name or people that you've been emailing back and forth with. So it's just a really cool weekend to like catch up with people, and then obviously like hit the parties. Because it has been in smaller markets, a lot of people have been doing big parties, but obviously next year it's in the Bay and the following year it's in Los Angeles. So it'll pick back up. And after COVID, I think people were kind of like weary about like how many people would show up for All-Star Weekend and things like that. But like I said, I think it'll ramp back up.
That's lit. That's lit. I'm gonna have to get the sauce from you. I actually literally just booked my flight today to All-Star Weekend. So I'm going to the first one this year. So you're gonna have to give me the rundown on the All-Star Weekend ins and outs. You know what I mean?
My biggest tip if you're going is literally just try to hit every event you can. And I like, even if it's like just showing face at things and just meeting people, like even at WNBA All-Star, we were like 30 minutes, hour in everything, like, because everything like starts to overlap, especially like on those like days approaching the game. I know like usually stuff starts like Thursday, it's like kind of like the welcoming, right? Friday things start to ramp up, Saturday things start to ramp up, and then usually everybody leaves like Sunday night, so there's not too much going on that night, because a lot of people like to get out of there as soon as the game is over, wherever it's at. But yeah, I think I would just, if you are going to All-Star Weekend, just honestly try to hit up every and any event that you can, and just like kind of plan your time out. And I make sure I have everything in my calendar, like what is going on, and then I kind of like either like schedule it or like weigh out my options if there are like two things that conflict. But
Got my notes out for sure. Jeez. So I wanted to kind of switch gears a little bit. So I know obviously going from the All-Star Weekend kind of changing gears. I want to talk about your basketball career, because before there was Infamous Kayce and the content creation and the influencing, right? It was the Hooper. And I want to talk about that aspect. I know Seattle is a rich basketball city. Me being from the DMV and Alexis, we're the DMV loyalists. We're both from Maryland. So we got obviously Kevin Durant, Quinn Cook, Carmelo Anthony. We have a rich basketball tradition, but Seattle has a bunch of hoopers as well, from Jamal Crawford and Isaiah Thomas, DeJounte Murray. You got Paolo Banchero now. I mean, it's a bunch of guys, Zach LaVine. So I just want to talk to you about, I guess, that hoop culture for you growing up in Seattle and playing basketball, and just what your early days what can you remember from your early days hooping?
yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, Seattle has a very rich basketball community, a lot of talent here, like athletes per capita, like, you know what I mean? Like, obviously we're a smaller city, but the talent here is amazing. And maybe it's because there's not that much to do, so a lot of people spend time in the gym. But growing up, it was I'm kind of older than some of those guys you named, but definitely that like Isaiah Thomas age bracket. It's always been a very rich basketball community. Obviously, we didn't have social media back in the day like that to highlight the guys like they are able to now and in the past, like 5-10 years. But it's really cool to have grown up in the city. I mean, you have players like Brandon Roy, Nate Robinson. Obviously, those are a little bit of older guys. You know what I mean? I know you named Jamal Crawford and things like that. Jason Terry is from Seattle. There's a ton of players that you could name that are from here. And I mean, it's just a special community because it is so small. You know what I mean? And regardless of like really where you played in high school or whatever, like that AU scene, I know it's not the same as it used to be, but you had a ton of great players on, solid AU program teams.
Yeah.
I'm kind of interested to know just like what the culture of like the Seattle Storm is there. I know like WNBA markets and NBA markets are like so different, because I feel like the NBA doesn't have to fight as hard to establish fan base. So just like with you being there, like what have you noticed the culture of the Storm being there?
Yeah, so not sure if you guys know or not, but I started off as a ball girl for the Seattle Storm in 2003. So when I was a freshman, that was my first job. And so I was a ball girl from 2003 to 2011. And so like when I went to college, I still did ball girl stuff during the summer. And then when I graduated, I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And then they hired me as the equipment manager and video coordinator. So I've really seen the WNBA go from like point A to like point B. You know what I mean? And the growth has been insane. Obviously, we do not have an NBA team anymore. And Seattle fans, just in general of sports, is insane. Like I probably maybe am biased that I'm not in saying that like Seattle has like one of the best fan bases, but like when I would sit behind benches at the WNBA games, like when I was the ball girl, we did water and everything like that. You know what I mean? And I would sit behind benches and players would literally say like, I hate playing here. Like it is too loud. It is so hard to play here. You know what I mean? And you know, when like people always say like, oh, Seattle has the best fans, or like, you know, people go to concerts and they're like, oh yeah, they say every city has the best fans. But I've literally heard players say like, I hate playing here because it's so hard because the fans here are just so loud and so rich. And so, you know, it's really nice because we're lucky that the Seattle Storm has had a great team or they're rebuilding right now. You know what I mean? But they had a really great program for such a long period of time. You know, we have championships under our belt. I said we like I played. Seattle has championships under their belt. You know what I mean? And so they've been able to, they have their own fan base. They call them Storm Crazies. And just, I think that Seattle's just very prideful, like other cities, but like Seattle, I don't know how to explain it. It's just different. And they really just support really all the sports here. And I think because we don't have an NBA team, it's that much more important that they support, you know, the Storm. But again, the Storm has literally created their own fan base just because of like what they've done for the community. You know what I mean? And just how they've not only put on for like basketball, but women's basketball.
So how do you, speaking of Seattle and Seattle Storm, WNBA free agency is going on right now, and Skylar Diggins-Smith just announced she's going to the Seattle Storm. How do you feel about that?
I'm excited. I'm very excited. I think that Seattle, and if there was an interview too where Jewel Lloyd was asked, you know, like what does the team need? And her main thing was like, we need a point guard. And I think Skylar Diggins is a true point guard. I think she'll be, you know, she's a vet in the league now. I think that she'll be a great asset to the team. Again, like I mentioned, Seattle's kind of been in like a rebuild since like Sue left, Brianna has left, you know what I mean? And I think that they always somehow like pick themselves up and figure it out. And, you know, maybe they have a couple of years down, but then they figure it out. And so I have no doubt that the team will be great again. And I think she's a great asset to the team and she'll be good.
Now, if you had to describe your personal basketball game, take us back to the Hawaii Hilo days. How would you describe your game? If you could compare yourself to a player today, who would that player be?
I don't know if I would necessarily compare myself to a player like currently, but in high school, my high school coach used to call me the kid after Jason Kidd. Obviously, it was not nearly as good, but just like I was a true point guard. I was looking for an assist before I was looking to score. And so my coach used to always tell me like I used to play on Jason Kidd. And so again, he would call me the kid. I see like what he means just in the relation of like how we played and our style of play. But yeah, I was just a really solid, just through and through point guard. And coming out of middle school, I was a scorer. When I got to high school, my role changed, and my high school coach just didn't really get out of me what like my AAU coaches did in middle school. And so I kind of, my whole game changed. And then I turned into like a defensive like leader while still maintaining like being a point guard. And so it definitely was different because I was so used to being a scorer, and then going into high school, changing, and then going into college, it was like, okay, like you need to be like an all around like player. Like we need you to score, we need you to get assists, we need you to play defense, we need all of that, like not just one, not just, you know what I mean? And so my role was like going back and forth. And like I said, I just had issues with my high school coach that I just didn't feel like he got the best out of me. And so, yeah, my roles it was just weird going back and forth. Like obviously in basketball, we know you need to score, right? But it was just different.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you felt like that relationship was kind of like pulling a little bit, like you're pulling, he's pulling a little bit. So like even though like obviously your basketball career didn't stop in high school, so like how did you kind of work around that to still stay consistent, because you did obviously end up playing at the next
Yeah.
level, and a lot of people, you know, they dream, a lot of people say they dream for the WNBA, but just getting to college is also like a big feat. So like how did you kind of say, okay, my coach is not really doing what I need them to do, but I still love the game, I still want to play at the next level, so here's my checklist for what I need to do to make sure that I am going to school as a scholarship player and still playing basketball?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Because so my high school coach, it was kind of crazy. So I went to a K-12 growing up. So K through 8, I was at the same school. My dad was the PE teacher there. And in middle school, again, like I mentioned, I was a scorer. The high school coach at the time when I was at that school I loved watching him coach. I would practice with the high school girls when I was in middle school. He ended up taking the job at the high school I was going into. So we both basically came in at the same time. So he came in as the head coach at the high school I transferred to, and I was coming as an incoming freshman. So I thought it was going to be great. He didn't have like the school he came from. I don't know how you guys do your schools, but like it goes like the small schools, like it goes like B, and then it goes A, double A, triple A, and then 4A school. 4A's being the biggest. So he went from coaching at a B school to my high school as a 4A. So he literally went from the smallest to the biggest. And so he really didn't understand like letters and colleges and how all the recruitment stuff worked. And so it was literally if I didn't have my parents and, you know, AAU, like that is where I got all of my like that's where I was like seen. I was going to like the camps and all that stuff, and I was playing in tournaments, you know what I mean, where college coaches were. And so if it wasn't for me like taking matters into my own hands and going and playing for like in high school, I was like playing for like 2 or 3 AAU teams at once, just because I was trying to get as much exposure as I could. And so that is like where I got my that's where I was like seen by colleges. Unfortunately, I don't know how it is now, but like the schools were sending all the letters to my high school, and my high school coach was not getting them back to me. So that, I really believe that is why I ended up at a D2, just because like I was getting letters and my coach was not giving them to me. So in these college eyes, right, there's like thousands of players that are trying to go to these schools and they're recruiting. If so-and-so is not responding to the letters, that means they're not interested, right? But I'm not even knowing that these letters are coming in, and I didn't find out until like late into my senior year, right? And so by the end of my senior season, I was playing in like all these AU tournaments with my AU teams. I was starting on a team where every single girl on my team went D1, you know what I mean? But they were going to high schools that knew how to like push out and feed to like, you know what I mean? They knew what they had to do to get their players out. And so unfortunately, like I'm not gonna blame him or anything like that, but everything happens for a reason. But if it wasn't for me like going outside and playing AAU and like doing my own due diligence, I don't think I would have ended up even playing in college. Or I would have probably had to go to like a JC and then transferred out and try to get into a D1. So yeah. Sorry, that's my dog.
That coach was dang, man was sleep at the wheel. That's crazy.
I mean, I loved him, like great guy. He just, like I said, we came in together. He was coming in, and he didn't know how to like get his players to the next level. So,
but I think unfortunately that's a big part of why a lot of people don't kind of go to that next level, and that's something that I've realized kind of playing overseas. Is like a lot of people who have so much talent, right? Maybe they don't make it because they didn't have a good agent, or somebody couldn't get a Division I scholarship because they didn't play for the right AAU team, or you know, the college coach did something crazy, you know what I mean? Or a high school coach, excuse me. I think it's unfortunate that a lot of kids kind of get left just to the side or get left behind because of situations like that. But I think it says a lot, like Alexis said, to her point, that you were able to kind of persevere through that and still have a 4-year college career and play and graduate and everything.
Yeah, I think a lot too is like I went to like inner city school, so like I think also too like lack of resources, and that's still I think a thing now too, is like some parents just don't know, you know what I mean? And some kids don't know, some coaches don't know, and it's a lot of like lack of resources, lack of education on, you know what I mean, what other kids can be doing. And I think now, you know, with the power of social media too, like, you know what I mean, like there's other ways you can be seen, there's other ways you can contact, all those things. And so I do think there's a lot more resources now, which is great. obviously back when that was an option. It was literally letters in the mail. And if you were not returning those letters, that meant you were not interested. So.
Jeez. Well, go ahead, Lexi, you got a question?
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, you mentioned too that your dad was a PE teacher. So just like when it came to kind of navigating these different colleges and that, so did he kind of help you, or like did you have siblings to where like he knew that this worked with them, so he did that with you? Like how did you all kind of work together to still make sure that it was happening for you? Because then too, like I'm sure back then, like um not huddle, but like whatever the equivalent for basketball is, like that wasn't really popping like that because we're still talking about letters and things like that. So like, how did that correspondence go between you, dad, and said school?
Yeah, that's actually kind of funny that you ask, which probably tells my age, obviously. And now I'm thinking about it. It's so cringe that I think about it. No, like literally my dad was a PE teacher. And like we had to do all these like AU sanctioned things. Obviously, like we had to make sure that we were like NCAA certified, like we had to do all those things. Again, I don't know how it is now. But I was just blessed that again that my parents were very persistent with things. They asked questions, you know what I mean? And again, they put me in these AU programs that were like elite AU programs. Like my AU team in 8th grade, we placed 9th at nationals. Like we were like undefeated for like 2 years straight. You know what I mean? So I was in programs with coaches and players that like they had past players that they had like pushed through to like colleges and things like that. You know what I mean? And so again, I was very blessed that I was playing on these AU teams that had programs that knew how to, contact college coaches or get us in the tournaments to be seen by these college coaches. And I remember my senior year, so I went to UH Hilo. I ended up signing with them and I was there for 4 years. The head coach at UH Hilo was also coaching an AU team. She was actually like the interim coach for UH Hilo until they found like a full-time coach. And so she was coaching AU. She was coaching a Hawaii program. We were playing this UW at this tournament at University of Washington, and they were like the only Hawaii team. And obviously me being like Asian American, like my parents were like super intrigued by like, oh my God, there's other Asians and, other, there's islanders. My dad everyone always thinks he's like Hawaiian. So like, we were super drawn to like that team and like everybody was super excited to like watch them play like in the tournament. And so my dad ended up like chatting with the coach and she mentioned that she was the interim coach at UH Hilo and they kind of like exchanged information. And again, like I said, so everything was like letters at the time. And I remember my dad made me, oh my God, it's so cringe. He made me like film this like fundamentals like video because he met this guy who like got his daughter into like college. She played volleyball, but he said he got her in because he like made this like video of her doing like all the fundamentals to show she could do like she could hit, she could set, she could pass, she could serve, all that stuff. And then he sent that out to colleges just to like get her out there. And so this again, like sending physical DVDs in the mail to these colleges. And so my dad made me do like a video like that, but for basketball, and was like sending them out to colleges. And like that, like I don't think that went anywhere, but I'm just kind of like telling you like how it was back then, like of how he was just trying to help, like do anything that he could think of. And again, last minute, we just stayed in touch with that coach. She had a scholarship available, and I pretty much my only option at that time was to go to a junior college. I did get a letter from USC that was like, we have all our scholarships filled up, but like you could potentially walk on. That really wasn't an option for me. And so I just ended up signing in Hawaii.
Definitely a hell of a story. I want to get into kind of the transition, right? Going from the basketball into the content space. So you graduate from UH Elo, and I think the hardest part for any hooper is like, what's next, right? Because basketball's been your whole life, your whole identity growing up, you know what I mean? And then you have to kind of make that transition into that next phase. You mentioned a little bit earlier how you were, ball girl for the Seattle Storm, and they gave you your first job, you know what I mean? So when you're out of college, and you're trying to figure out what's next for you, like, how do you end up getting into the content space? Because I feel like even then, if I remember correctly, I think you graduated, 2010, 2011, or 2011, 2012, one of those 2 years. Yeah, it's 2011. So it's like, I feel like that's even then before really like Instagram and social media was really popping. You know what I mean? So what did you kind of do when you first got out of college to kind of figure out what was next for you after basketball?
Yeah, I mean, I had been playing basketball since I was in first grade. I don't think I ever had like fully free weekend for as long as I can remember, because like I mentioned to you guys, I was playing on like 3 AU teams at once. And that was like from middle school through high school. Like I was just playing on any team that I could just to get the exposure. And so when I finished college, I knew I was like so burnt out. Like part of me wanted to go try to play overseas and like China or Japan or somewhere where I could like potentially dominate, just me being like half Chinese, half Japanese, going to somewhere like that and trying to get on a team, you know, as like an American, but like as a Japanese American or Chinese American. But I was so burnt out. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go home and I'm going to try to figure out like something. And then maybe like I'll end up picking up a basketball again sometime later. But I was like, in the meantime, like I know I want to stick around basketball, but I don't know what that looks like. And so luckily, when I literally had graduated, I remember the girl who was the equipment manager, video coordinator at the time, and she was the boss of the ball kids. She had reached out and she told me that she was leaving because she was taking a new job. And she was like, I just want to let you know, like the position's open. So I ended up calling the director of ops, who was like the boss of the boss. Like, so she was like, not my boss directly, but like the boss of my boss.
Yeah.
We still answered to her though. And I called her and I was like, hey, I just want to let you know, like, I'm interested in the position. Like, what do I need to do? And she was like, you know, obviously I'd been with the organization for 8 years, damn near, just being a ball girl. So they knew me. She was like, well, like, we'll do an interview over the phone and then like, blah, blah, blah. Ended up having an interview, got the job. Honestly, I was so scared because I'm like, I've never really had like a real job before. You know what I mean? And playing basketball, like I didn't get the opportunity for like internships because we didn't have time. You know what I mean? And so I was like, I don't know if I'm like, I don't know what it means to have a full-time job and not play basketball. Like, I don't know what that looks like. And so I was really scared. And I remember being like, oh my God, mom, what am I going to do? Like, I just don't know, you know? And so I ended up taking that position. I know you asked about social media, but it kind of like segues into that, right? It's when I took the position, again, it was like, okay, maybe this is like the way that I'm going to stay in basketball, but not actually be playing. I ended up hating, like not the organization. I ended up hating that side of basketball. Like I never really saw, as a player, sometimes like players will never see that side of basketball, whether it's coaching or operations or whatever. There was way too many politics for me on that side. Not that I was necessarily involved, but that I just seen. And I was like, oh my God, if I stay on this side of basketball, like I think I'm going to hate the game. And I did not want that. And so I was like, okay, I have to figure out another way that I can stay in sports, but not like either on front office, because I was close enough, but I was like not involved in front office, but I still seen how it worked. And I was just like, yeah, I don't like this side of basketball. And so I ended up leaving and working in marketing at Nordstrom for 4 years. And then I was sitting in a cubicle and I was like, okay, well, this is not basketball. This is not for me, but I was still learning so much, like working in corporate. And again, growing up, my mom was like, you're going to be a doctor, a nurse, you're going to work in corporate, or you're going to do this. Like those were the options. Like being a social media influencer wasn't a thing. Being like an entrepreneur was not very, you know, people did it, but it wasn't like as common as it is now. And so I was like scared. It was like 2018 and I was doing social media on the side. I was getting paid pretty well from like little posts here and there. And I was doing the bare minimum. I remember I did like a thing for Puma and my paycheck for one post was like what I got paid in a 2-week or like for like the month of me working at Nordstrom, 40 plus hours a week. You know what I mean? And I was like, if I like put a little more effort into this social media thing, I'm doing the bare minimum right now and I'm making really good money. Imagine if I put like full effort into this. And again, this is like really before like being an influencer was a thing. I remember I sat my mom down and I was like, hey, cubicle life isn't for me. I've been doing this long enough. Like, I don't want to do this. Like, I want to do social media. And she looked at me and she was like, I was so scared. Because if she would have told me no, I would have still been probably working at that job. But she was like, okay, like, I don't really know what that looks like. I don't know what that means, but just promise me you'll always have insurance. And I was like, okay, bet. Went back to my desk. I put my 2-week notice and the rest is history. I've been doing it full time ever since. But because of my relationship with the WNBA and the Seattle Storm is what kind of brought everything back full circle. Because when NBA started to dabble into like seeing how they could utilize influencers when they came to Seattle, there was a game here in Seattle where I think it was Sacramento played, I think Golden State here for, it was the last game that they played in the Key Arena, which is where the Sonics played before they tore down the arena. So Katie came and played back in the arena before they tore it down. It was the last game. And NBA was like, oh, we want people from Seattle, somebody from Seattle that can like help push the game, blah, blah, blah. And again, they were still like learning about influencer stuff. But that is how I got my foot back in the door with NBA, WNBA, and then kind of the rest is history.
Yeesh.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, they don't realize too, with like the equipment managing and stuff, it's like with on the WNBA side, like usually like on the NBA side, there's like 4 different people that do that one job.
Yes.
But with like
Yes.
WNBA, literally you're wearing that one hat, you're booking the hotels, you're booking the rental cars, you're booking the players that are there, you're booking their apartments, you're helping find school for their kids. You're packing shoes. You have to make sure that, and then also people don't realize that there's 4 different uniforms. You have to make sure you're packing the first uniform. And then like each of the players have their own thing. Like, Jewel Lloyd likes a knee pad, this person. So it's like literally you have to do all these things.
Oh
And
my.
like, yeah. And then like literally like if something goes wrong, even if it's not your fault, like
It's your
it's
fault.
still your fault, literally. But like on the NBA side, there's one person that handles travel, there's one person that handles accommodations, there's one person that helps like that whole transition period with the families, or like helps you find like there's like 4 people, but there's like
Please
one
let everybody know, because I don't think that they
literally,
understand that there literally be like 8 equipment managers for an NBA
yeah,
team. Like literally, whatever. If you ever, unless you're like a coach or something, unless you're not like a coach or something and you work for the WNBA, I promise you do like 5 jobs. Okay,
yeah,
like one, yeah. So I'm very glad that you like call that out, because that's a real thing. And like again, you have to know every single player, what they like, and it's like. I remember I used to be so stressed out because making sure that every piece of laundry was dried perfectly. You know what I mean? Nothing was wrinkled. Like, you know what I mean? Like socks were falling off of the loops, like those little things. Like, oh my God.
yeah. Because even like when it comes to doing laundry, like you think like, okay, you put the stuff in the washing machine, you just leave it, and you go and do all these things. You go home, forgot to put the stuff in the dryer, and now it's like, why are these things not on there? And then 2, it's kind of like a lot of people. One thing that I don't like is a lot of people use the WNBA as a stepping stone to do NFL or NBA. And I think in order to work in the WNBA, I mean, it's good to have like aspirations and goals, but I feel like in order to work in the WNBA, you have to be like truly passionate about the league, because on those days where you're wearing the hat of 5 other people, it's kind of like you have to remember, like, okay, I'm doing this because I really want to see the league, expand and things like that. It can't be one of those things where it's like, okay, um, the men's college team, they're not letting me do stuff, so let me go do stuff with the women's basketball team and just hope that somebody puts me on. I think like the people that work in women's basketball have to really like it for what it is in order for everyone to kind of be like a cohesive mix.
Yeah. No, absolutely. That's it's very true. And you really gotta like love your job. You know what I mean? Because like I said, you're doing 75 things. And so yeah, I mean, it is a very special space, but yeah, it was like I was the first person at the gym hours before, and I was the last person to leave hours later. So yeah, it was a lot.
That's tough. Well, shoot, well, I think I didn't even know that. So y'all just taught me something on the pod. You know what I mean? So you learn something new every day. But I wanted to kind of ask you, kind of take it to a present day when it comes to the content creation space and the influencing that you're doing today, right? You mentioned how like when you were doing the original job, right? Like you hated it. It was like, dang, this isn't really what I want to be in basketball, but this isn't really it. You know what I mean? And I feel like today, when people see the term like influencer or content creator, right? They think, oh man, you just get paid to post, or you get that job sweet. But there's also a lot of stuff that goes on within that industry and in that space that people don't consider, whether it's burnout or creative block, and like you don't have a conventional work hour. It's not like when you're doing content, it's a 9 to 5, and all right, 5 o'clock, I'm done with this content. It's like, nah, sometimes you might gotta stay until 2 a.m. and edit that video or send it to the brand. Then they might send you 3-4 edits that you got to fix, and it might be weekends or Sundays or whatever the case may be. So like, kind of shed light on, now that I guess hindsight is always 2020. Like, since you've been in this space for so long now, what are some of the things that you've kind of experienced that people might not consider when they think about this industry?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, obviously I am beyond blessed to do what I do, have the schedule that I have. And I know people always like people that aren't a content creator or an influencer, oftentimes they're like, yeah, your life can't be that hard. You know what I mean? Like, oh my God, you do content for full time. You know what I mean? Like, I've seen girls on TikTok get roasted because they're like, oh, you have no idea what it means to be an influencer or do content. And it's like, there's a lot that goes into it. You know, whether people see that firsthand or not, you know, and it's a lot, I think for most people can speak to this, that it's a lot on the mental health. For me, I am super big on mental awareness, mental health, all that stuff. And like, you really don't get a break. You know what I mean? A lot of people use social media as something they do in, you know, their downtime that they just sit on when they are bored or things like that. But it's like, for somebody who's creating content, like you're constantly having to be on social media, you know what I mean? Just keep up with trends, to see what's going on, to stay relevant, to keep up with current, you know, events and things like that that's going on. And so again, like I said, I am very blessed to do what I do, and I wouldn't change it for the world. But that there's just, sometimes it just sucks because there's like not an on and off switch, you know what I mean? Where I wish I could just completely fall off the face of the internet for a little bit and just like decompress and get my mental together. You know what I mean? Like when I'm having a bad day, like I just like, there are times where like I do not want to be on social media, or I just like literally, and people are like, oh, just deactivate or like delete your Instagram, or like the app. And I'm like, yeah, but it's not the same. You know what I mean? Because I'm like so tempted. It's still there. Like there's just times where I just want to, you know what I mean? Like I have bad days. I'm human. You know what I mean? And so I think that's like the number one thing, is making sure that you're just maintaining like a good mental, you know what I mean? Like you're in a good mental space when you're on these social media platforms, and then like bringing yourself back to real life. You know what I mean? Like I'm big on making sure that you're like living in real life. You know what I mean? A lot of influencers and content creators, their entire life is social media. And I try to maintain like a work-life balance, regardless of if people see that social media and posting on social media isn't like work. Like for me, it is. You know what I mean? And I think aside from the mental health aspect, I think the other thing that's really hard is like the financial stability. And when I say that, it's like for me, and I can't speak for other influencers or all of other influencers, but you'll have like really good months and you'll have like all these deals, and then you may have like 2 to 3 months where you really don't do anything, you know what I mean? Or you don't know where your next deal is coming from, you know, and that can be very stressful. And so making sure that you're, you know, being very responsible with your money and things like that, because it's like, I learned early on, you know what I mean? Like I'm getting so excited that I'm getting these big checks, and I'm like, ooh, I want to go out, I want to go shopping, I want to spend. But I'm like, then I get 2 months in, and I'm like, damn, I haven't had a deal in a long time, and I'm still living off these other checks. You know what I mean? And so the financial instability is like kind of scary. And again, now that I've been doing this for so long, I've been able to do better money management. But that is like one of the things I think that people don't talk about all the time, is that a lot of social media content branding and things like that is very inconsistent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one thing that people forget too is like a lot of times, like it's not like, so for instance, when you were working at Nordstrom's, you knew, okay, on the 26th, I'm getting X amount of money, direct deposit. Sometimes it might even hit Thursday night, like whatever. But like with influencing, there's net 30, there's net 60, which means like literally I might have done this content on February. Well, February is not a good month to use. I might have done this content on March 1st, but literally if the company really wanted to, they could wait until March 30th to give me my money. And so at that point, the rotation of when I was supposed to pay my car note has already passed. When the other bills were due, the phone for the ones for the I'm still on my mom's phone, but for the ones that aren't, the phone has already gone. So it's like, and then God forbid you do a net 60, and it's like you posted that video in January, it's about to be spring, the company still has not paid you. So I think a lot of people think that like, oh, you know, and I feel like too, that kind of puts a little wrench in how you can plan, because if you know you're getting this check on this week, and then this next check on that week, you know, like, okay, this week is going to be the check that I pay my bills with. The next check is going to be like what I call like my fun check. I, you know, can go out to eat. I can do this. I can buy these shoes. I can wait in line for this product. I can do different things. I know this is my fun check. But like with net 30 and net 60, you have no idea, is it going to come on the 20th day or is it going to come on the 30th day? So like really just planning so that you're not just like SOL at the end of the month.
Isn't there a net
Yeah,
90? Isn't there a
Yeah,
net?
net 90 exists. Yeah, there's
and
net
even and good
120.
luck. Yeah. And good luck even being on a net 30, because there are handfuls of companies who will not pay you on the net 30, even though you like sign a contract that says net 30. And a lot of it is based off of like, if you didn't send your invoice on time, if you didn't, you know what I mean? They go based off of most companies that I've worked with go net 30 from when you send and they approve your invoice. So it's like, if like I'm under an agency and well, I've since moved to a new agency, but the one before, like they were not very consistent on getting my invoice out like as soon as I completed like or posted. And so like companies like say my agency had forgot to send the invoice, they send it 2 weeks later. Now I'm getting paid 2 weeks on top of my net 30, and this is like net 30, like 30 business days. You know what I mean? So it's just like even on 30, like good luck being paid on time.
That's treacherous. Yeah, see, now, but I'm glad we're having this conversation, because I think that these are the type of things that people don't take into consideration when they think about influencing and content creation and things like that. And I want to kind of ask you too, because I also feel like a lot of people on the flip side, right? It's stressful and there's a lot of things that are going on, but there's also a lot of money in content creation, and especially in today's day and age, because it's like people are kind of brands and companies are getting away from having, putting money into commercials or putting money into like billboards, because people aren't really watching TV nowadays. Like they're tuning in to YouTubers and their favorite, content creators on Instagram and TikTok and things like that. So it makes more sense for these brands, these businesses to pay people who are going to advertise their content through word of mouth, as opposed to putting the 30-second commercial. People are just going to flip the channel anyways and go to the next show that's on. You know what I mean? So I wanted to ask you, you don't have to get into specific as far as the brand, but like, what is the most money that a brand like offered to pay you for a job? Just to kind of give people an idea of, I guess, the fact that these brands do have budgets for these type of jobs and for these type of opportunities to market their products.
It varies, right? Probably I usually don't like to talk money just because it's just hard, because there's even girls that like have less followers than me, but potentially could get paid more, you know what I mean? Or like, I don't like to just boast about things. So, I mean,
Whatever you feel comfortable. Or you can see, what was, I guess, your reaction when you got that first like big check and was like, damn, I didn't know this amount of money was even out there.
yes. So yeah, so I just don't like to talk numbers, just because it's kind of like, I don't want to come across as like bragging or boasting. And I know that sometimes these big deals aren't the typical deal, right? My biggest deal that I got was insane to me. And let's just say that it was probably like normally what I would get in like 2, 3, 4 campaigns, you know what I mean? And I got it in one. Right. And I was in such shock that they were paying this much. And I was not the only influencer. There was multiple of us, and this was like a campaign that they did with 2 different groups. You know what I mean? And I actually had asked the marketing team or the social team, like honestly, like, how did you guys get this budget? Because again, to me, I was like being paid that much for a brand, you know what I mean? Like campaign, whatever you want to call it. And they basically were like, it's crazy, but they were like, the costs for commercials and like you mentioned, like commercials, billboards, things like that are so expensive. And I don't think people realize that. And they were like, actually, like, do you know how much money we saved by using influencers and content creators? And so me, in my head, I'm like, y'all are spending so much money on this. Like, that's insane. And in their heads, they're like, we're saving so much money and we're still getting like the same amount of views, if not more views and more eyes in a new network by using content creators, as opposed to, like you said, like not many people are seeing commercials and billboards and looking at magazines and newspapers and things like that. You know what I mean? And so in their head, they were saving money, but that just goes to show like, and again, I've been in this space for 6 years, you know what I mean? And so this number still wows me, you know what I mean? And I can only imagine like there's big creators way bigger than me that I'm sure do those numbers on campaigns, you know what I mean? But to me and the space that I'm in and what I do, like that number is still very surprising to me. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, the thing about it too is like with these brands, like these brands have money. They have a lot of money. You know what I mean? Sorry to cuss, but I say that to say it changed my perspective on things, because when I thought I was like asking for too much money, or when I thought that I was asking for something that was like unreasonable, when I got paid that amount and they broke it down to me, like, actually, we save a lot of money by using content creators. Like, I was like, hold on, these big brands have been lowballing me. Like
Hold up.
they're probably laughing at me. And I'm like, oh, this is what I asked for. And they're probably, they come in, a lot of brands will come in too and say like, okay, we offer you X amount. And I'm like, okay, no, that's under my rate. Here is this. And they're probably still laughing at me like, well, that's way below what we were gonna, offer her, but she offered this much money, so this is what we're gonna give to her. You know what I mean? And we still save 10,000, 20,000, whatever dollars by just lowballing her, and then her coming in with a, you know what I mean, like her rate. So I mean, I said to just say like, don't sell yourself short, you know what I mean, and shoot for the stars. The worst thing they're gonna say is no, and come in maybe lower, which, I've always had this thing where I always say aim above the target, because if you fall short, like, you will be right on target. And that's kind of what I see with like the money thing. It's like, you ask for something high, maybe, you know what I mean, that is reasonable, and if it falls short, you're still like in that, of what you're gonna, like, what you would do a campaign for.
Yeah.
You mentioned your how you were with one agency and then you moved to another. So just like, I know a lot of people, like when they think of agencies, they think of like either this new wave of like NIL agencies trying to get athletes different things, or they think of like how like actors and sportscasters have agents. But like with the influencing agent space, I guess like two-part questions. Like my first question is, with all the influencing agencies that are available, how did you realize like, okay, this is the one that I want to go with? So that's like my first question. Then my other part is, how much of it is agency connections getting you different things versus connections that you already have? Because before you signed to even the agency, before you signed to an agency in general, you probably had, connections here and there, or like, sometimes it just comes word of mouth. It's like, okay, me and my friend do influencing, she just did this thing, she threw my name in the hat. So like, how much of it is like a group effort, I guess, as far as like things that you've done, and then stuff that the agency does on its own? And I guess second part to that is, how did you go about choosing which agency you felt like would best represent you?
Yeah, so I'm gonna be honest, I'm not really signed. I guess I call it an agency, but they weren't really an agency. Like, they were more like a talent company. They mostly represented athletes. I was their first influencer, and I really had, it's like, I don't know, I guess like the roles, the terminology, things have changed. I've always had like a manager, who I looked at as somebody who helped me manage my calendar, who helped me do my deals, things like that. So there is like obviously like a gray area between like what an agent is and what a manager does. You know what I mean? And I was like, it was like during COVID, I was like looking for new representation. I wasn't sure what that looked like. I wouldn't know if I wanted to go and like try to be part of an agency. But again, like at that time, agencies were still kind of a new thing for influencers. Like, there was people that I knew that were signed to agencies, but it was because they were doing like acting stuff as well. So they were signed to agencies like CAA and things like that, that represent like NBA players and WNBA players, and they help get those players into like acting roles, commercials, things like that. And that's why I knew some influencers that were in that space, but I didn't qualify in that because I wasn't really doing anything outside of brand stuff. And then I was approached by, so Dave Robinson is from Seattle. He had a manager that he was working with, who basically told Nate like, hey, like if she's looking for like representation, like I would love to represent her. And it was like perfect timing because I was looking for a new representation. And so my manager, his name is Polo, worked for a company named Playmaker. And again, like I said, they're like a sports company, and they cover a bunch of different like betting, comedy, memes, things like that, as well as like sports, you know what I mean? And he worked under them, and they created kind of like a talent group, but we weren't like exclusive to just only Playmaker stuff, you know what I mean? Or I could do deals outside. I wasn't just exclusive to them. And the reason why I signed with him was because, one, he didn't make me exclusive, so I could still technically do deals on my own, you know what I mean, or outside of him. Two was that I trusted Nate. Nate said he was great, you know what I mean? So I knew somebody who had already worked with him, and Nate mentioned that he got him, like deals and was great at negotiating things like that. And that was like one of the things that I felt like I needed help with, was like negotiating deals. And then 3 was that I was the first, as I mentioned, I was the first influencer on their team. Everybody else was like athletes. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm kind of like a one-on-one in this space, which I think will be beneficial for me. So I was like, I mean, I'll try it out. If I don't like it and it's not beneficial for me, then, you know, it is what it is, right? And so I ended up signing with him in like, when was COVID? Like 2020 or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, yeah, that is why I signed with him, just because I was like, you know, this could be cool, to be part of, you know, I'm still in the sports space, but I'm the only influencer for that space. So that's what maybe I'll just get more opportunities. Now, when it comes to deals, and I know this is like kind of like your second question, I'm going to be honest, 90% of my deals come to me directly. So I get an email or a DM where brands are contacting me to try to work with me. And then I push them to my manager. My manager takes them, he negotiates the deals. You know what I mean? He finds out the details. Obviously, he knows my rates, my analytics, all that stuff. However, I will say that he's great at maintaining relationships, which I think is very important. So like we're able to reach out again after we do campaigns. And I like to say that I like to work with companies more than once, because it just shows, like, you know what I mean? Like they like your work, they appreciate what you do, you know what I mean? And obviously it must have been beneficial for them if they want to go back and work with you. So 90% of my deals come to me. I know that for other influencers, it's like opposite, where agencies are always pitching them and they're getting deals that way. But for me specifically, 90% of my deals come through email, DM, and then my team executes, or Polo executes.
Yeah, I think it's really smart that you went with a situation where you're the only influencer, because I think a lot of people don't realize that it's kind of like friendly competition within the agency, because it's kind of like, okay, when a brand comes to them saying like, hey, we need somebody for something, they have a pot of 8 people that they recommend. But if a brand comes to them and they're like, hey, we need an influencer, you're the only one there. So they put all their eggs in you and they sell you, versus you having to compete with the other influencer on said agency trying to get that deal. Instead, they're just like pushing you. And it kind of like, helps you lock that in to kind of like, X out the middleman. It's like, hey, this is our go-to person. She's great, go with her. So I definitely do think that was smart for you to go somewhere where there isn't, a lot of people doing what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely, like I said, because I was their first influencer, it was like a lot of like learning lessons, right? Because most of like his previous deals were like with athletes. And so it wasn't so much they had to pitch anything, because brands know if they want to work with the athlete or not, right? Because they go directly for them. So it's just a matter of like finding out who represents them. You know what I mean? But as me, it was just a little bit different. And like I said, I've just been like very lucky that 90% of my deals have come to me, and then I've pushed them out for him to execute. You know what I mean? But like you said, like if there was ever brands that reached out to them, it was like, okay, here's our number one influencer, or pretty much our only one, you know what I mean? And now it's evolved, so they definitely represent other influencers, but it is like, you know what I mean? Like it was very nice to be like, okay, I was like big fish, little pond there, or the only fish in the pond for influencers, you know what I mean? So yeah.
So my question is, like, before you had an agency or a manager, right, that's kind of helping you navigate this stuff, right? How do you, what advice would you give, I guess, for somebody who was trying to maybe be in an influencer space and trying to secure brand deals, right? Would you recommend somebody get an agency and then kind of like partner up with the agency and have them kind of try to facilitate opportunities and deals? Would you recommend just kind of pitching brands? Like, what do you think is the best path for somebody who's trying to blaze this, career trajectory, but they don't really know how to get started, or how to work with some of these brands, at the beginning?
Yeah. I think that an agency makes sense for some people. I know that there are a ton of more options and agencies that are out there now than when I was looking. And I guess if it makes sense for you, I think that you have to do your due diligence to make sure that the agency makes sense for you. I mean, a lot of these agencies are taking really big cuts, and I don't think that a lot of times they're necessary. Like, yes, if you are not well known and you are looking for exposure, I think that's where these agencies really thrive, especially agencies that have built relationships and have maintained relationships, and they just have a bunch of brands on their roster too, just like they have influencers, you know what I mean? And so like these brands go specifically to these agencies for, their influencers, right? But if not an agency, like that is not the only way to get seen. Yes, it can help, but there's so many platforms that exist that you can literally go and kind of like it shows like a list of like campaigns that are available and you can like apply for them. You know what I mean? And if you're not getting at all of them, but you're still putting yourself out there, where you can like, again, like apply for campaigns if you think it makes sense for your brand or whatever. And then not only just that, but like you can also pitch yourself. Like, so I always like, again, it is a little bit, the market's a little more saturated now, but that is the advice that I would give is, again, hopping on websites. Like there's like, Obviously is one of the websites, like Influential, I think is another one. I can't think of all the names, but if you just like Google like influencer platforms and things like that, you can literally go and you can sign up and like submit yourself for different campaigns, and hey, you may get chosen. If not that, then like literally going on people's websites and searching at the very bottom to see if like there's emails for partnerships or collaborations or, affiliate programs. Like those also I know have been helpful to other people. So it really just depends where you are in the space, what you're looking to do. And because the market is so saturated right now, even getting into an agency is just, and finding representation, like there are like, you have to have like a certain amount of, like you have to make sense for the agency too to take you on, you know what I mean? So if not that, then just doing your own due diligence by like emailing brands, signing up for those different, like I was like signed up on like, and I still am on like 10 different of those like kind of websites where they shoot you campaigns. So like, hey, we think you'll be a fit for this, you should sign up, or just going on and you can like look at the dashboard and see, like, again, like I said, like all these different campaigns that you can like potentially sign up for, and it'll ask you like, do you have this many followers? Are you in this location? Do you do this? You know what I mean? And if it fits your profile, then you can apply for it.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you, like, obviously now, right? Like, you're doing these NBA events, WNBA events. You work with a ton of, different things, Hulu, eBay, right? Like, I think from the outside looking in, man, like it's super dope to be able to go to these places, go to these events. You're going to the NBA Finals, All-Star Weekend, but it's crazy when you're going to these places and it's like, yeah, I'm here, but I'm here for work. You know what I mean? And it's like you get to do these different type of crazy things and it be your job. You know what I mean? So like, what are some of the favorite events that you've been able to work, or some things that you, I guess, been able to do that I guess you reflect back on and like, dang, like that was a super dope opportunity or a super dope job that I was able to do?
Yeah. Every and anything NBA, WNBA has been amazing. I think probably the top two in my book right now is the first WNBA All-Star that I ever attended, which was in Vegas. And that is when I got to interview Kobe. That is absolutely my top two. And then I think the most recent thing that I've done that has been amazing was I did the NBA draft. And so I got to interview all of the, essentially like the lottery picks, and then some with Starry. And then I got to be on the red carpet at the draft. Before the show, I got to walk on the stage and pretend like I was getting drafted. Like that was just really cool. Like every experience has been amazing, and I'm so grateful for it. And I've learned so many different things just being in these different spaces. But yeah, anything NBA, WNBA, anytime that I get to travel, I've done some cool activations where I've gotten to go to like music festivals. Those are really cool because it's not in my typical thing that I'm normally doing, because it's not necessarily sports, but it's still in like lifestyle culture. You know what I mean? And I feel like that kind of falls in the umbrella that I'm under. But honestly, any opportunity that I get to travel and, be in a different city and experience something cool has just been amazing.
What was it like interviewing Kobe?
It was crazy. I didn't know that I was going to do it. My role that weekend was literally, I interviewed all the W girls on media day about their sneakers that they had on. We had this like little platform that they had made. It was like a little mini Vegas, and they shot like, they had their foot on the little platform, and it was like literally like their shoe was like way huger than like the strip or whatever. Anyways, I interviewed all the players, asked them what sneaker that they were going to wear for the game, why, all that stuff. And then on the day of the game, they pretty much wanted me to like go and talk to any like NBA players, any celebrities that were there. And I was like there as like a WNBA Kicks representative. So I was literally there to talk like all things Kicks. And so I got interviewed Chris Paul, I interviewed Jamal Crawford, I interviewed Monte Morris, and then before the game. I got there early. I actually was getting ready in the bathroom in the arena, and I was like doing my makeup, and I remember I heard a little voice, and she was like, is that like, can I use the sink? Or she asked me a question like that, and I turned around and it was Gigi. And then it was just us in the bathroom, and she just asked obviously nothing crazy. She just asked if she could use the sink. Because I was like getting ready, and it was like literally like one of those bathrooms that has like one stall and then just the sink. And then I went out, and my NBA rep was like, yo, Kobe's here. We're gonna get you in. Literally 2 questions, in and out, nothing else. And I was like, okay, like, I don't know what I'm gonna ask, but okay. And I remember it just being like, and that was probably like the best situation, because had he told me like the day before, like, you're gonna interview Kobe, I would have probably freaked. And obviously I was only talking sneakers, so it was like, I don't need to think that crazy about it, you know what I mean? But because I got thrown in like literally so fast, it was just like, don't think about it, just go and ask him the same questions you're asking everybody else, and get in and get out, and don't bother him, because you know what I mean, like, he was there to watch the game with his daughter.
Yeah.
And so obviously, like, I didn't want to interrupt it, I didn't want to bother, but he was so nice, so humble, and it was just a blessing. But it was really cool, great memory, definitely.
That's awesome.
Very memorable.
Yeah. I was gonna say that. I'm like, how do you prepare to even ask Kobe questions? Because like the journalist in me is like, all right, dang, I got Kobe. I gotta figure out something crazy to ask him. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Again, like I was literally there to talk sneakers, so it's like you can only ask so many, sneaker questions. So I was like, honestly, it's my first time interviewing him. Let me just pretty much ask the same. Like, everybody pretty much got that same one question, was like, what sneakers you got on, and why. Another question that I asked a couple of the guys was like, when you're getting ready, you choose your sneakers, your outfit first. Like, those are the kind of questions like people want to, hear answers to. And then I think the other question I asked Kobe, no, it was the other question I asked Kobe, was just who was he excited to watch? Because obviously him being a huge women's basketball advocate, you know what I mean? He was super excited to be there and actually like enjoy the game.
That's awesome.
You said that was through WNBA Kicks. What was the?
Yeah, so it was through WNBA, but like WNBA was really pushing like WNBA Kicks at the time. Like NBA has like NBA Kicks. And so like I was like, kind of like the rep. Like, I helped do some of the first things. I know WNBA Kicks really isn't like a huge thing now. Obviously they still highlight the kicks, but it was like its own little hashtag, everything. And like at one point we did like a sneaker bracket at the end of the year where everyone voted on like the best sneakers of the W. They haven't done that in a while, but I helped do some like those first things. And so like that was like kind of like a test thing that we did at WNBA All-Star. But it was really cool.
So for the people who don't really know, like, kind of what goes into the, like, in your bio, right, you have like NBA and WNBA host, right? So like when the NBA or the WNBA, let's take All-Star Weekend, for example. Like, if they were to fly you out to work All-Star Weekend, right, what does that actually look like? Like, what are some of your responsibilities? What is your job like as a host when you're there? You know what I mean? Like, I feel a lot of people might see that and be like, host, like, what does that mean? You know what I mean? Like, can you just give kind of a rundown of like what a typical day would be like on the job, working for the NBA or the WNBA?
Yeah, it really just depends, because every time I go out, it's never for like the same thing, right? You look at players like, I'm not players, excuse me. You look at like actual like hosts like Taylor Rooks and things like sports reporters. They do pretty much very consistent work in every situation at every game. You know what I mean? They're doing the reporting, they're doing talking, they're interviewing the players, right? Mine's a little bit different because it's just like kind of like a need basis, right? So it's like if I'm doing something branded, like I did with Starry, we did like a rapid fire questions, and then there was like a big Starry question at the end. You know what I mean? And then sometimes I'll go in and I'll just do like quick interviews for the NBA app, and they will just tell me like, hey, like, we just want to highlight, again, a lot of stuff I talk about when it comes to NBA, WNBA is a lot around like kicks and things like that, or like lifestyle stuff. It's, thank God I don't need to talk like numbers of like basketball and things like that, because like that's never been a thing for me. You know what I mean? Like, obviously I watch basketball, I know basketball, I can talk basketball, but if you're going to ask me numbers and years and how many points someone scored at this time, I can't answer that for you. You know what I mean? But that's why it's really nice that I get to talk like lifestyle, sneakers, all that kind of stuff, because it's like I can talk about that any time of the day with anybody, with anything. You know what I mean? And so there's not like a typical set schedule of things. It just really depends like what I'm getting, or like why I'm there, what the ask is. But it's typically just like around sneakers, you know what I mean? And then you go into a weekend like All-Star Weekend and you might just get booked to do one of the events, you know what I mean? And you have nothing else to do work-wise the rest of the weekend, you know what I mean? Or like you'll have one full day of something. And then I know for like All-Star Weekend, it's really big when influencers go or content creators go, because I know a lot of the people like my peers will go and they'll have like a bunch of different brand deals. So they'll do something with Nike, and then they'll have something with NBA, and then they'll have something with like maybe like a liquor company, or they'll do something with junior NBA. You know what I mean? Like people like to stack the stuff that they do, as long as it's like not conflict of interest. You know what I mean? Like obviously they're not gonna do like something with Adidas and Nike, you know what I mean? But they're just like stacking their stuff for the weekend. And usually people like will pitch themselves like, hey, I'm already going to be at All-Star Weekend. Do you have, a paid opportunity, here? Like they'll know a brand that they've worked with before, and they'll just, hey, I'm already going to be at All-Star Weekend. I know you guys have an activation. If you guys have any opportunities, you know what I mean? Like, let me know.
Yeah. Shoot, I'm glad you said that too, because like I said, I'm about to be going to my first All-Star. I'm like, dang, I'm trying to figure out how I can network and get into events and like all that kind of stuff. So I need to do a little bit of research to see like what events are going to be going on, and things like that to see what I can get into. But
Yeah.
I think one thing that you said that I think is really important is like you're talking about culture, you're talking about shoes. Like, the game of basketball is so much more than just what's happening on the court. And I think now more than ever, right? If you look at the game, right? We always talk about on All Facts and on this platform, like the fits and how like the NBA tunnel has become like a runway for like fashion, and you have celebrities sitting courtside, and it's like a whole spectacle now. I feel like there's so many players that are doing different things, whether it's YouTube and content creation and acting. Like the game has come such a long way from back in the day where it was like, oh, if you're not playing basketball 24/7, you're not focused. It's like now it's almost encouraged to like be diverse, or to, I guess, just be more well-rounded. So I want to ask you, kind of being an influencer in the space and kind of being somebody who's pushing that culture forward outside of basketball, where do you see the game going, in the next couple of years, as far as just continuing to grow in other areas and intersecting, fashion? It was crazy. Like even now, like the NBA has a partnership with like Skims. You know what I mean? Like it's crazy that things like that are happening, in 2023 and now 2024. And I think it's only going to continue to grow when you see just these athletes that are showcasing other sides of themselves other than basketball.
I think it's great. I mean, when I was working for the WNBA, I was doing my social media on the side. Again, it wasn't full time, but I still always had my platform. And I was like, at the time, encouraging like some of our players, like Alicia Clark, she played for the Storm, and she is like an amazing cook. And I was like, girl, you should be like doing like YouTubes, or like letting people know like you have like you are something. Because a lot of people look at athletes and like you said, like they're like, you are only an athlete, and that is all we want to know you for. We don't want to, you know what I mean? Like that is all you should be doing. That's all you should be focused on. Like, what are you out partying for? You're not a human being. You're an athlete. You need to do that. You know what I mean? But I'm like, there's so much more to these players than just the sport. Like who they are outside of basketball is like so much cooler. You know what I mean? So much more important. And so like, I was always telling her like, like you should highlight these things, like do a YouTube, do something, you know what I mean? And so, and now to see her like doing that, you know what I mean? And like doing videos, doing Instagram where she's cooking and showing herself outside of sports. Like, I think it's just great that people are getting to know these players off the court, because like I said, there's so much more than just a basketball player. Like there's a lot of these players are super talented, like musically, creatively, artists, you know what I mean? Like there's just so much more depth to them than just what people see on the court. And so I think that with them highlighting things like fashion and things like that, like you mentioned, like the Skims partnership, I think that there's just going to be more partnerships with more brands, like with the WUC. Last year, I think they did like a partnership with like some of the players did a partnership with like Glossier, you know what I mean? Like I think makeup partnerships, hair partnerships, like those kind of things, you know what I mean? Because like you look at these girls, they have like perfect marketing, you know what I mean, opportunity when these girls are wearing lashes and them lashes are perfect at the end of the night, you know what I mean? Or some girls, wear makeup and it's like, oh, they sweat, but look at their makeup is flawless. Like there's so many opportunities for marketing and brands and companies to like work with these different athletes and open up a completely new market. You know what I mean? So I just see the future being like a lot of partnerships, a lot more expansion, again, a lot more highlighting, the lifestyle part of these players and just getting to know them, because I feel like that's really what fans want, whether they admit it or not. And you obviously you have those fans, like I said, that are like, you're supposed to play basketball and that's it. We don't want to hear what you think about politics. We don't want to hear social stuff from you. You know what I mean? We don't care what you think about what's going on in the world. You know what I mean? Like, stick to basketball, right? But it's like majority of the people do care about what they have to say, what they think, what their hobbies are outside. And I feel like the more people, especially like fans, get like an insight or like a behind the scenes of like who these people are, the more like bought in they are, the more, invested they are. And I think that that is so valuable because, when followers or fans feel like they like know these people personally and like people give them like an insight of those things, like it just makes them even more of a loyal fan. So I just see everything growing. And like I see, like I said, you see some of these WNBA players getting like TV shows and things like that. So I think it's great. And I think it's just going to keep growing.
Yeah, I think part of what you said too, it kind of also takes like somebody being in the room. So like when Glossier was thinking about partnering with WNBA All-Star, somebody on that team had to say like, hey, All-Star game is coming up. We should see how we can get involved. It's not something that just like happens. And I think that's another reason why it's so important to have like different minority women in these spaces, because obviously, the WNBA has so many races in it. So I feel like in order to, races, nationality, all types of things in it. So I feel like it takes having that minority woman at the table. When Glossier or Miel, she just partnered with the WNBA and Angel Reese. Like it took someone in that room to say, hey, this is a market. And even with people talking now with the Super Bowl, now that they know all these girls are going to be watching because Taylor Swift, now you have Elf buying in, and you have all these different beauty brands paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for these 30-second ads because they know these girls are going to be watching. Not saying that that'll determine if they buy Elf or not, but obviously people are starting to be aware and saying like, I guess too, like one of the main things I miss, like obviously your hair is green. So like what was that decision? Like how did that go as far as like, I'm gonna dye my hair green? And like when your parents first saw it, like what was that react like how did that whole thing, like from ideation of hey, I'm gonna dye it green to hey mom and dad, look at what I did? Like I need to know from the beginning to the end, like how did that go?
Yeah. I've been dyeing my hair honestly since I was like in middle school. It obviously started out with like just like little blonde streaks, you know what I mean? And then in high school, I started to dabble in color. I had this hairstylist who literally, he was gay, he was flamboyant, I loved him. And he worked in the salon where my mom got her hair done. And my mom's hairstylist is more conservative, but my mom would drop me off and I would be like, yeah, do this color. Like, I want this color. And he would be like, I don't care what your mom says. Like, I will do it. You know what I mean? And so like, we used to like push like the boundaries with her early on. And so like in high school I was like, I had red hair, I had orange hair, I had purple hair, you know what I mean? And so like fast forward to 2018, like green was like you know what I mean? Like in college I had a full red hair, you know what I mean? I changed it so many times. And I think so like in 2018 I had seen a girl on Instagram who had like green hair and I was like, oh my God, that's so cute. Like I've never seen it on anybody before. Like if I were to dye my hair again, like, and at this time I was like, I had taken so many years to go platinum blonde. And so I was already platinum blonde, which is like really the hardest part of like coloring, is like getting your hair super, super light. I remember this hairstylist reached out to me and he was like, hey, have you ever thought about coloring your hair? I think you should do it. And I was like, he was like, have you ever thought of green? I think it'd be great on you. And I was like, oh my God, this is a sign from God. I literally responded back immediately. I was like, oh my God, I've been wanting to dye my hair green. Like, let's do it. And he was like, this is like Friday night. I'm responding back to him. And he's like, okay, I can get you in tomorrow, Saturday at 11 o'clock. And I was like, bet. I went in and the rest is history. Like I said, it was like, I already like tried my mom in high school. So by this time I was obviously grown, she was like literally not phased. And honestly, the green has just become a part of the brand. And I think being associated with a color is so valuable when it comes to marketing. And I have people hit me up all the time, like, oh my God, I seen this green thing. You need this. Like they're constantly sending me things that are green. Oh, I thought of you. You know what I mean? So to be associated with a color is really something special. During COVID, I dyed my hair blue. Nobody was messaging me and saying like, oh, I seen this blue thing. I thought of you. You know what I mean? Oh, I seen this. I thought of you. Like did not get that at all with blue. And I was like, okay, something's not adding up. I need to go back to green. Like that was like the brand that was like what made me different. And yeah, so like I said, like just to be like associated, anything people see green, like they're always tagging me and sending it to me. And so yeah.
I guess kind of like a part two to that. How do you think being in the influencer space, how do you think that really just helped you kind of just be your authentic self? Because I feel like if you still, like, let's say you stayed at Nordstrom's in marketing, and let's say you kind of just moved up the ladder there, they might not have been as welcoming to green hair, tattoos, eyelashes, nails, all of that. But in the content space, it's more so like, hey, we actually want to use her because she has all these things and she looks like the average girl. Most of us don't. Now it's kind of flipping because it's like before it was if you had the nails, the lashes, and the hair, it was you were the odd one out. Now it's like if you're super conservative, super covered up with the suits, like even like as sports reporters going to the games, we don't wear suits with heels anymore. We wear dunks, a graphic tee, whatever. So like things are like, it's kind of like if you're conservative now, you're the oddball out. So like, how would you say just kind of creating your own career path and just influencing? How do you think that kind of helps you show up for your authentic self without having to think like, what is this person going to think about me doing X, Y?
Yeah, so at the very end of me being in corporate, I did have green hair. I always had tattoos, but I did definitely try to like hide them. But the Nordstrom culture, obviously when I went in, it was obviously super corporate, but like towards like the tail end of like when I was like leaving, the culture did shift a little bit. And so I definitely pushed the boundaries there too. You know what I mean? Like people looked at me all the time like I was crazy. Like, why was I there? I did have long nails, I had tattoos, and I really feel like I couldn't fully be myself. Like the way I dressed at work, I was like, ew, who are you? You know what I mean? And so being able to be an influencer, and getting able to be myself fully, like it's like a way to like separate myself from the rest, right? Because there are other influencers, you know what I mean? But it's like, oh, I'm the green hair girl with lots of tattoos, you know what I mean? And so it's like easy to call out. But it's just been really nice to be in a space where you can fully be yourself and be asked to represent brands as yourself. And I think I forget that too, again, coming from just growing up, and again, my mom being like, like I said, I'm about to turn 35. My mom growing up was like, you could be a doctor, you could be a nurse, you could be a firefighter, a police officer. You know what I mean? Like those were like the things that you can work at a retail store. You know what I mean? You can work at Target. Like these are the things that you're going to do, and you really can't have tattoos in corporate and things like that, right? That's like what I thought, was life. That's what I thought a career was going to be. You know what I mean? And so even now when I step in rooms, I'd be forgetting because I'm like, I go to events and I'm like, oh my God, do I gotta dress up? Do I need to like be formal? You know what I mean? Because these are like professional events. But I'm like, no, like they see your Instagram. That is who they hired. That is who they invited to these events. That is who they want to see. If you show up in a 3-piece suit, they're gonna be like, who are you? Why are you dressed like that? You know what I mean? Like, we wanted you to come because you are an individual. You do stand out. Like, this is why we want you in our room. You know what I mean? And so I think that it is, again, just a blessing that this influencer space, you can literally be whoever you want, and there is some audience for you. You know what I mean? And there's people that are going to love you for who you are. And I feel like the more individual you are, the more different you are, the more you step outside the boundaries. You know what I mean? Like people like that.
Yeah, that's awesome. The last question I have for you before we kind of have some quick hitters, have some fun, and then get you on out the door is, I think you said something that was like kind of super important just now about, okay, people say you could be a doctor and you can be a lawyer, you could, be a retail, you could do all these different things. It's like super traditional, right? And I think that's what we all are taught in school, right? Go up and go to a 4-year university and get your degree and then work at this job and retire, and that's it. You know what I mean? And to be somebody like yourself who's blazed her own path, right? Who has the green hair, the tattoos and nails, and have kind of created your own identity and your own career, your own image outside of kind of the norm, right? Being a woman in sports, right? Which is also obviously something that is rare and is growing now, but being able to excel at that, right? Like, how do you reflect on what your career is today, versus what you once thought it would be when you were that hooper in Seattle, with Hoop Dreams trying to, become a pro, right? Like, how do you reflect on everything you've been able to accomplish from the events you've worked and the money you've been able to make and the partnerships you've been able to acquire, and looking back on it now?
Yeah, I mean, I just look at everything with a bunch of gratitude, right? I'm just super grateful to be where I am, to work with the brands that I've worked with, to be in the spaces, to be in the rooms that I've been in, to meet the people that I've met. Not only grateful, but just super blessed. You know what I mean? And just looking back, it has been a process. It still is a process, right? It's still like social media is constantly changing. The space is constantly changing. There's more and more people trying to get in the space. You know what I mean? So I just look back at everything and I'm just like, obviously everything that I went through is the reason why, or who I am today, why I am where I am right now. You know what I mean? And everything I went through, I'm a firm believer that everything happens for a reason. There's a reason I did not go D1. There was a reason why I did not continue to play basketball. There was a reason, you know what I mean? Why I ended up in corporate. Just if I didn't go to corporate, maybe I would have never figured out that this was the path for me. You know what I mean? So I just look back as everything as just like a learning lesson. I don't look at anything as like a failure, because I feel like if you learn something, then it's not a failure, even if it doesn't end up the way that you thought. And so again, I just look at the whole process and back at my journey as just, you know, a just huge learning lesson. And hopefully it's something that I can, you know, take what I've learned and pass on to other people and just share my knowledge and share what I've learned. So either people don't make some of the mistakes I made, or that they can be bigger than me, better than me. You know what I mean? Like the next generation is like, you know, we have to look forward to.
Love that. Love that. All right, so we got a couple quick hitters for you, and then we'll go ahead and wrap it up and get you one out the door. The first one I got for you is, what was your first big splurge when you first got your first, I guess, big check? And people always ask the people in the league, like, yo, when you got to the league, you first hear your name called, what's your first purchase? Was it, a car, a house for your mom, the Birkin? Like, what was your first splurge purse that you splurge purchase that you made when you first got some money?
That's a hard question. Man, I don't really know what it was. Man, maybe it was like a designer bag or something that I bought for myself. My biggest purchase was I bought a condo in 2016. So that was like a big splurge, I guess, for me, you know what I mean? But it was, if we're talking material things, it was probably like a bag or something. I don't remember. But the one thing I always told myself was like, I'm going to save up and I'm going to buy a Rolex. And I did that 2 years ago. And so that's probably like my biggest purchase, but it wasn't my first purchase. Like obviously I was like young with obviously I was like young with money. So I'm like, or a little bit of money, you know what I mean? I'm like, oh, this is my money. I can spend it how I want to spend it. So yeah, probably something like designer or something that I did not need.
Okay. You've been very vocal about your taste in music. I know you're a big music lover. So I need your top five artists right now that you're listening to.
Top five. I love Lil Baby. I like Drake. SZA. Love Burna Boy. Love Burna Boy. Currently, man, who else have I been listening to? Dang, if you would have asked me before all the beef, I would have probably said Nicki Minaj again, but no. I can't even listen to her the same anymore. And who else would I say? I still listen to a ton of like Summer Walker, and I love Mariah the Scientist. So
Okay. Oh, Mariah the Scientist. Did you hear her wonderful jail call the other day?
oh my God, yeah. I'm not even mad at her because like, let's be real, like a lot of girls have those same kind of conversations on the one-on-one. I feel like that was just not our business. And I'm pretty sure I probably said some cringe things to my boyfriend. So
Hey, listen, the way I seen that, I said, dang, man, look, young thug, you might gotta stay in jail because I need Mariah to uniform like that. No cap.
girls are lying if they say that they don't act like that with their man on the phone. And if they don't, then
If you ain't calling me on the phone talking about how much you love me, you know what I mean, daddy, about your baby, then you can keep it. You know what I mean? Oh, now that's funny. All right, so next one. All right, so you're going out a night on the town with the girlies. What's the ideal night out? What y'all getting into?
In Seattle, probably dinner and back home, maybe a hookah bar because there's not really anything to do. Again, if you would have asked me like 3 years ago, it would have been like, I honestly really hate going to dinner before I go out. But if you would ask me like years ago, I would have said like going out or like dinner before, then going out and then like somehow making it to after hours and then getting back home. Again, now if you ask me in Seattle, dinner, hookah, maybe go home. But yeah, it's if I'm out of town, it definitely is a different story because I'm like I said, I get that burst of energy and I'm like, let's go. But then I don't know, it's tiring. It's been repetitive. I've been in the game for a while and I think I'm like halfway partied out. Like I said, unless I'm like a weekend like all-star where it's just like these big events where you're, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
Okay. All-Star weekend or summer league? We're talking purely vibes. Purely vibes. Which one are you taking?
probably all-star weekend just because it's like everything crammed into like one weekend, whereas like summer league is kind of like a spread of 2 weeks. 2 weeks? I think it's like, yeah, like a 2 week time frame. It is fun. I think asking me one or the other, but like the nice thing about summer league is like it's in the summer, it's in Vegas, you know what I mean? It's hot. Like I could literally, I'm a Pisces, so I love the water, so I could literally be at the pool all day. But in terms of just like everybody being in one space, all-star weekend, and there's just really cool activations and events that are happening in like a really small period of time.
Yeah. Okay. I love that. All right. So last question we always ask all our guests is, who is somebody who we should have on the What's in Your Bag podcast next? And whoever you say, you got to get in your J Kidd bag. You know what I mean? You got to get your Jason Kidd point guard bag and give us the assist and help us get him on.
Probably KJ Wright. She is the sideline reporter for the Memphis Grizzlies, has become a really great friend of mine. She's amazing. I absolutely adore her as not only a friend, but what she does. I think she's a great reporter. I think she's a great moderator. I think she is a great host. And she can talk all things, anything. Like the way I've seen her work is crazy. Like she's so talented, so great at what she does. Like you could literally throw her in. Not to like blab on because you didn't ask this, but like I did some like hosting stuff for OBL, which was the women's basketball league that Tracy McGrady had. Not this past year, but the year before. We needed a color commentator and another sideline like commentator. She was in town for summer league. We were in Vegas the end of summer league. It was like right after summer league. We had our championship one-on-one thing in Vegas. She was in town. I was like, hey, we're looking for a commentator. Like, I think you'd be great. This is my first time actually like seeing her like in the flesh, like doing what she does. She came in, knew nothing about the like league. She did her research. She spent the few days that she had to do her, her due diligence, came in and killed it. Like she was just so professional. You would have thought she had been doing OBL the entire time. And yeah, she's just super talented and she's just a great person outside of that. And so 10 out of 10 recommend, and we will get her on the show.
Say no more. It's funny, man, because Sydney last week recommended her as well. So
yeah, we like, I got pictures from All-Star Weekend of all of us. Like we're a little trio, you know what I mean? Like we get along really well, compliment each other really well. Like, sometimes it's hard to go out with girls and like have a good time without any like those girls are so unproblematic. They're fun. They have a good time. Yeah, love them.
all right, so we got two for KJ Wright, man. So we got to make sure we get her on the show. We got to make that happen. We definitely got to make that happen. Okay, man. But man, this has been a wonderful episode, a wonderful conversation. I always like to give people, their flowers, man. I think that get somebody who I think has done an exceptional job, number one, at transitioning from basketball into that next career. You know what I mean? I don't think that a lot of people who listen to this understand how difficult that is, you know what I mean, to transition into something and to excel at it. And I feel like something that even I'm trying to navigate now and still playing and doing this podcast stuff, it's hard, so definitely hats off to you for being able to navigate that and blaze your own path in this industry now as somebody who's unique and who's absolutely killing it. And I think you're somebody who owns their own identity and somebody that a lot of people can look to for inspiration and can learn a lot from. So I definitely thank you for coming on today. You know, we really appreciate it, and definitely look forward to continuing to show love and I'll hopefully see you at All-Star Weekend, so we can hopefully be able to meet in person and connect and chop it up down there in Indianapolis.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. You guys have been great.
No doubt, no doubt. All righty, guys. This has been another episode of the What's in Your Bag podcast presented by Bet Online. As always, like we said at the beginning of the show, guys, make sure you like, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating, tell a friend to tell a friend. It goes a long, long way about, you know, just getting the good gospel of the What's in Your Bag podcast out there. But until next time, folks, peace.
Suave. I've been in my bag for a while, I'm invincible. Story of a young boss, grinding shit get critical. Calling on my bros one time, cause you special. I had some hoop dreams of right rounds for my mental. Every target that I shoot is on point like a pencil. Different road, change relationships, I'm so sorry. Came up from the trenches and I made it, I say hardly. Now